I have 3 jokes. Irene laughed at all of them and said any were good. So it's like door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. Door number 1 is about a cat. Door number 2 is about a man and a grizzly bear. And door number 3 is a little boy in Sunday school. 2, the grizzly bear. This would be Gary's. He comes in. Maybe I should move down to do this for Gary.
Yeah.
Gary comes in the office and he said, there was this atheist walking in the woods. Wasn't looking at God's creation or feeling any too good about it. All of a sudden saw a grizzly bear come after him. The grizzly bear's running and the atheist is running. Pretty soon the grizzly bear got the atheist down like this and had the paw right up in the air ready to strike. And the atheist goes, God, I know I haven't done very good in believing in you, but if you would save me from this, I promise that I'll become a Christian. And God says, well, you know, you haven't done too good with that yet. Oh. Well, could you make the bear a Christian? The bear stand up like this and then said, I want to thank you, Lord, for this meal. I told Gary I might use this joke today.
Sweet.
My goodness. You know, the story of the mustard seed, and gosh, many times I've done many things with this sermon, both in Billings and here in Great Falls, and probably the most fearful one was when I decided that maybe I should bring a mustard seed to everybody in the congregation, and so they could see that that little tiny seed is all that we have to have. You know, but I didn't go buy mustard seeds on their own, or mustard seeds that you would plant. I got in the Irene's pickling spices, and I dug the mustard seeds out. Well, wouldn't you know, just about when I got ready to do the sermon, this woman named Terry decides, I might have enough of that faith. She went home and planted it. I thought, oh no, it's pickling spice mustard seed. I'm a little bit worried. And by gosh, that thing sprouted. She had a little cup and she set it in the window and it sprouted and it started to grow. And boy, if you don't think I was thanking God, because I wasn't too sure. So that was one mustard sermon that caused me grief. Seems like when I got to do the mustard sermon, I always get an idea and then I get confounded. I thought, you know, I was talking with Just about that, and I thought, well, mustard seed isn't too much, and started thinking about mustard and the taste of mustard, and I've kind of eaten with some of y'all, and I know Sharon puts mustard on her sandwich, and I thought, well, you know, the Jews, they probably have to have a little mustard to go so they can have a lamb and mustard sandwich, get it?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so I started thinking about mustard, and I thought, just sure as I say, mustard is an odd taste. You know, sure as I say that, I'm going to have somebody that loves that dang mustard. So I started to think about, now who do I know when I go to the fair, gets a corn dog and doesn't ketchup one side, but mustard's both sides? Catherine. That blew that. Then I looked at David and I said something, well, does anybody eat just plain mustard? Oh, I do. By the spoonful. I thought you're supposed to want it with something. He said, sometimes I put horseradish in it and then I eat it by the spoon. At least it was with something. So I was trying to make the point that the mustard seed in and of itself is better when it's paired with something else, you know. Little mustard with a Polish sausage and sauerkraut, the mustard on it. But you know, I can't do that in this congregation because there are some people that like the taste of just mustard. You know, I couldn't get to the Grey Poupon with a little white wine and stone ground mustard and all the things about mustard I could do for a faith walk. Well, you know, I've been trying to tell you how God's been preparing me for these sermons, and yesterday was pretty spooky because I was kind of mad. I was having a stomp with God. I do that every now and then. And it's hard to write a sermon when you're having a stomp with God. Because I was having a stomp. So usually what I do is I rearrange something, or I keep myself real busy and exert myself to get myself wrapped around so I could do the sermon. So I rearranged the living room. But I scared Ricky to death because he'd called 3 times, and I knew he was going to ask me about the sermon, and I still stomping with God, so I wasn't picking up. Pretty soon, there was my phone, the house phone on Irene. She said, would you talk to Ricky? I said, tell him about 5 minutes. Here was the stomp. You know, they've been dealing with my silly old adrenal gland that doesn't want to work. And now they've raised the prednisone 5, so now I have to take 10. And I was having a fuss about that. So I was having this fuss with God, and I tried to work on the sermon. I thought, oh, just a little seed of mustard, just a little seed of mustard. This is not working. So I go pull the couch around a little bit more, and then I went back, and I looked at it, and it said, the apostle said to the Lord, increase our faith. I had it backwards. I don't know about you, but whenever I've ever heard we need more faith, or, what faith can do and how faith appears, and it doesn't have to be, it always sounds to me like I got to do something to get deeper faith. So I'd be looking at ways to get deeper faith, and I looked at some stuff on there, and I looked at this prayer that Ruth Graham, the daughter of Billy Graham, does. And she says, when I pray the ABCs. And she starts out with all these things about God. A, almighty, all-knowing. B, blessing, and goes through the whole alphabet and finds that by the time she gets to Z, her attitude has changed. And I thought, well, that's a good way, change your attitude if you're not having faith. So I thought about that, and I still hadn't looked at the first line. And the first line of this said, the apostle said to Jesus, increase our faith. So I think, well, truth is, I can't increase your faith. I can encourage all of us to increase our faith. But there is no way in any human power that I can increase your faith or you can increase anybody else's faith. It is not possible. In order to have our faith increased, it has to be a movement of God. It has to be a movement of God. It cannot be a movement of anybody else other than that we can encourage each other to have faith. And I started to look at that, and I thought, well, that was it, back to the old prednisone thing. How much faith do I have in God that God's watching out for me? And how much belief do I have that God's going to take care of it? Or am I just going to stew and stomp? Makes the house look better, but it doesn't get me very far. So, the mustard seed of faith, we can put it in the ground. We cannot make it grow. We can do everything about it, but we cannot make it grow. So, we know that little seed can be as tall as 6 feet, and that it can provide a place for the birds of the air if it's growing. But it has to be a movement of God in each one of us where we believe, honest to God, that we know God has everything in tow. How many times do we get situations that we are struggling with? We might be struggling with our partner and our relationship at home. We might be struggling with a co-worker. We might be struggling with health concerns. We might be struggling with loss and grief over someone who's just crossed over. All of those things can be happening within one congregation on any given Sunday. Some people can come and be awful joyful. They may be in that high part of that, but all of that understanding in the world can't give us the answer for why these things happen and what we're supposed to learn. Sometimes we just feel picked on. Have you ever felt like that? It's like when things just go boom, boom, boom. I've heard people say, well, that's 3, I shouldn't have any more. It scares me when you have a 4th one. But the truth is that there are some times we feel that we're getting picked on. And it could be happening at home and at work and everywhere else we might go. And we wonder why. Why do people, why that usually happens is because usually we put faith in somebody else, and what happened? They let us down. Usually we put faith in somebody else and they let us down because we're people and we let each other down. Hopefully we try not to do that and be more respectful, but we will let each other down. Try as we might as human beings, we're going to do that. And that's usually what gets us in a mess. Another person we love has let us down. Another person we have loved has done something that's wounded our soul. And boy, don't we struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all kinds of things come out of that. We can also become people we really don't like in the way we respond to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you get punched and you sidekick out there and you open up your mouth and then wish you never said anything. Or sometimes you just get even by doing little mean things. Or sometimes we can get even by just not saying anything, forgetting that there's another person in our life altogether. All those things come from people, not from God. They come from people, but we get stirred up about that. It doesn't mean that we aren't supposed to learn from that situation. We do. But hopefully what we learn is that God has got some major plan for you and for me. And there's a reason that we're being through that. Charmy used to call it being pulled through a knothole backwards. You know what I mean? There are times in our spiritual walk that it is just plumb trudging, where you're hanging on by a string. And it just seems no matter where you go, the situation is not getting any lighter, nor is the burden getting any lighter. There are always those times in the wilderness. And we each will have them. Generally what's around those times is some type of grief. I don't know if we understand just how big grief is. Most of us have a tendency to get it all stocked up inside of us, and then something happens, and down come the tears. And then we have a really good cry. And we cry and cry. Sometimes we've cried so hard we don't know if we're going to quit. That's one of those cries when all you can do is go, I mean, there's just nothing more you can do. Grief is a very difficult critter to come to understand. Because even the littlest things can be a loss. Now, they might not be a loss to Kathy, but it might be a loss to me. Mm-hmm. You know, and it might not be, if it's a loss to Carl, it might be the little thing, but to me, it's a big thing. You know, there's nothing worse than trying to talk to somebody about hurting and they discount your pain. You know, I don't know about the rest of you, but I know you are you're Montanans, you're rugged individuals. You know, you pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, you just keep going. And then every once in a while, you know, that feeling comes out, and sometimes we put faith in people that just were not in the good space they needed to be in to hear us, and they discount it. You know what I mean by that? Oh, that's nothing to worry about. Mm-hmm. Well, it's different to different people as what it causes to worry. Like I said, some things are bigger to people and littler to people, and it can be similar issue.